Please give it up for Eduardo.
Can everybody hear me? Thank you, Liz. That was beautiful and beautifully written. Thank you. This is the first time I'm sharing the poems from my second book in front of an audience, so I'm a bit nervous, even though I've been doing this for a few years. I'm going to begin with the first poem from Guillotine. It's a poem I tried to make work, tried to write for my first book, but I realized I wasn't brave enough to include it in the first book. So if you're working on your first book, it's okay not to include everything you want to say in the first book. You have a second book coming, a third book coming. Ceremonial. Delirious, touch-starved, I pinch a mole on my skin, pull it off like a bead. I pinch and pull until I'm holding a black rosary. Prayer will not cool my fever. Prayer will not melt my belly fat, will not thin my thighs. A copper-faced man once called me beautiful. Stupid, stupid man. I am obese. I am worthless. I can still feel his thumb, warm, burrowed, moving in my mouth. His thumbnail, a flake of sugar, he would not allow me to swallow. Desperate for the sting of snow on my skin, rosary tight in my fist, I walk into a closet, crawl into a wedding dress. Oh Lord, here I am. Thank you. The second poem is a persona poem. The speaker is a Mexican-American Border Patrol agent in his late 40s, working the terrain between Tucson, Arizona, Nogales, Arizona, and Nogales, Mexico, the Sonoran Desert, where I was born and raised. And that's all I think you need to know about the speaker. The title is obvious, but what can I do? I only have a Master of Fine Arts at the end of the day. Border Patrol agent. Summer is a puta. Thank you. Because sometimes you read this poem, those first lines, and nothing. I'm looking at you, Wisconsin. Okay. Okay. Summer is a puta. I park beneath branches, crank up the AC in the Jeep. I hate the rearview mirror. It makes me look like my father, chaste and singed. Last week, beneath a sky Walmart blue, in a clearing full of bottles, sneakers, teepee rows, I found a body. Legs gnawed to the knees, barbed wire tight around the throat. I remembered graffiti on a boulder. God is always hungry. Sometimes with binoculars, I watch wild horses hurry through the heat. Once a yearling stopped mid-gallop, then collapsed into a bed of coals the rain could not extinguish. The radio is always crackling. Sits wets sighted on infrared. Need a spic speaker stat. I only speak Spanish with my father. He often mistakes blue parakeets perched on the stove for gas flames. Last July, far from Tucson, I found a rape tree, torn panties draped on branches, the tree a warning, a way for smugglers to claim terrain. Lightning climbs a hillside like a stilt walker. Rain strikes the windshield. I think of my wife, asleep on her side, breasts pressed together as if one were dreaming the other. Her womb empty, my dick useless. There are things I just can't tell her. Sometimes only body parts remain. They're buried in baby caskets. One of the hearts of the second book, Guillotine, is unrequited love, What happens to the lyric speaker, aka me? When the speaker falls in love, desires, lusts after somebody who can't return those emotions, those wants, how do you navigate the world with that extra weight on your shoulders, that absence which is a presence? When I first started writing this poem, which is titled Autobiography of My Hungers, the central memory of the poem of two men at a bar booth, one confessing desire, the other one gently rebuffing it. For years, I poured all the drafts center that memory, right? So all the drafts just focus and center that memory. And I realized way too late that that memory had become a constriction, right? There was too narrow of a space for the language to do what it needed to do. When that memory in my mind, I flipped from constriction to filter. What else can I push through that memory is when the poem came to life for me. And what else I pushed through was coming of age at the height of the AIDS epidemic, being a larger, bigger person in the world, and how I navigate that. So from constriction to filter, it was the key for this poem. Autobiography of My Hungers. His beard, an avalanche of honey, an avalanche of thorns. In a bar too close to the Pacific, he said, I don't love you, but not because I couldn't be attracted to you. Liar. Even my soul is pot-bellied. Thinness in my mind equals the gay men on the nightly news. Kissed by death and public scorn. The anchorman declaring weight loss is one of the first symptoms. The Portuguese have a word for imaginary, never to be experienced love. Whoop-de-doo. I don't love you, he said. The words flung him back. In his eyes, I saw it. To another bar, where a woman sidestepped his desire, another hunger, our friendship. In 10th grade, weeks after my first kiss, my mother said, you're looking thinner. That evening, I smuggled a cake into my room. I ate it with my hands, licked buttercream off my thumbs until I puked. Desire with no future, bitter longing. I starved myself by yearning for intimacy that doesn't and won't exist. Holding hands on a ferry, tracing with the tip of my tongue a jawline. In a bar too close to the Pacific, he said, I don't love you, but not because I couldn't be attracted to you. His beard, an avalanche of thorns, an avalanche of honey. This is the title poem of the book Guillotine. I'm kidding when I say this, but I often say, I only write to have pretty book covers. That's the whole reason I write. This is a title poem, Guillotine. The scorpions always arrive at dawn. Gently, their pincers touch the cuts on my lips. I clutch the edges of the mattress, stare at the mirrored ceiling. My mouth opens, but no sound staggers out. The scorpions, dark green, dank, reach in, pull out the razor blade under my tongue. Two scorpions, a razor blade, slowly, in unison, without letting go of the metal. They move, a little guillotine, making its way down my body. I remember dragging my thumb through his beard, coppery and difficult. The scorpions pause, tilt the blade, a threat, a reminder. It's my task to stop yearning for as long as it takes them to carry a blade across my skin. My thoughts swerve from monsoon storms to accordions to pecan groves. The little guillotine starts moving again. I begin to sense the enormity of my body, the blade high in the air, for now. This poem is titled Sentence. It steals language from one of my favorite contemporary Canadian poets, Don Mackay. And I want to read it today for Carl Phillips, who changed my life with one phone call. Sentence. I crawl back, He unpacks his tools, oils the wooden handles, rinses the metal. Fragrant his thighs, fragrant his sneer. Coy and eternity inked on his skin. An ecstatic blue, a bewildered green. Some wounds are ovals, some wounds are opals. The ears of a white wolf pivot toward the moon. I flee now and then, alone in the desert for months, a nomad in a kimono oppressed to gather dust. Beautiful his throat, his words even more beautiful. It's my turn to ask for a bit more from you. He likes it when I bleed, strangers once. Gently he hammers gold into a sentence. Gently the sentence enters me. Yeah, when the book came out, my oldest nephew asked, "What is those 2 lines? What are they talking about?" I have no clue, buddy. End with these 2 last poems. Questions for my body. Why are you nocturnal? How many cathedrals have you entered? Has cruelty ever saved you? Do you remember the length of his thumbs? Isn't that enough cake? Have you ever soaked your feet in gasoline? Do you still fear the virus? How can you sleep in this heat? Is that a soul patch? Did you laugh or cry at Keats' grave? Have you been claimed? This last poem is in 2 parts. In the first poem, there's a lot of leaping from different time periods. There's a social logic at work. And the second section, there's a stillness. The speaker's kind of anchored. I wanted to see what happens to the lyric space when you yoke together those 2 kind of energies, which means I spend too much time thinking about the lyric space. Around every circle another can be drawn, which comes, of course, from Emerson. And the end of the second section is rephrasing something said by St. Augustine. So if you're impressed, I'm just stealing it. 1. In 10th grade, I kissed a guy who called me a faggot once or twice a week. I still see his voice, 6 hummingbirds nailed to a wall. In an olive grove outside of Fuente Grande in 1936, a teacher, 2 bullfighters, and Federico Garcia Lorca were shot to death by fascist soldiers. During the Reagan years, I sweated out new language, Capsi Sarcoma, Ferbil, Oral Candaces. Last summer in Sevilla, I flirted with a stranger. He pinched my belly, walked away laughing. Later, along Calle Arjona, a remix of Girls Just Want to Have Fun poured out of a passing taxi cab. Shut the fuck up, Cyndi Lauper, I yelled. Mala copa, joder. The soldier who shot Lorca bragged he'd fired 2 bullets into his ass for being queer. For years, I desired a man who didn't desire me. He was gentle with my lust. I never thanked him. I'm thanking him now. But once, in a splinter-rich booth, he held my hand, a kindness I can't forgive. 2. Diminished but quick, I sprint into the desert toward a dust devil, slowly twisting along a canal. I step into the grit and whirl, not dust after all, but a spiral of locust, each a coil of gold oiled with honey. Long hind legs click, click, click. Not one skims my skin. A thunderhead on the horizon shimmers, half-built cathedral. What a saint said about God, I believe about loneliness, a circle whose center is everywhere and a circumference nowhere. Gracias.
Point microphone at your mouth. Well, that's what it says up here. Hi, everyone. Such an honor and a gift to be reading with you all. I'm going to read 2 poems from my book, Cut to Bloom, and then 3 new ones. Okay. This first one is called The Forgotten War, and it starts with 3 footnotes that I'll read before I jump in. 1. Oh, and a content warning for sexual violence and imperialism. 1. The Korean War is often referred to as the Forgotten War because of its absence from U.S. public attention. 2. Japan colonized Korea for 35 years before the Korean War, forcing everyone to take on Japanese names and speak only in Japanese. Secretary Taft sanctioned this occupation as long as Japan agreed the U.S. could continue to control the Philippines. 3. Hundreds of thousands of women were forced into sexual servitude by the Japanese military until the end of World War II. American military personnel continued to visit the comfort stations until they were closed in 1946. The Forgotten War. 1. My grandfather was a soldier in a war where only white men could be heroes and my people, the herd, to be saved. 3 million Korean civilians killed, pocketed like coins for democracy, which is to say he was born upon, born to forget who pulled the trigger. 2. Grandmother never talks about her childhood and hoards everything. Cabinets of ketchup and Spam, reused toilet paper drying on the sink's edge, teaching us to pick up each grain of rice, eyeing the outskirts of her plates, never talking about the Korean pride out like teeth, born to forget the name her mother called her, foraging instead for words like hunger and please. 3. What is a plea? And the language of men collecting 500,000 comfort women, many only 12, most dying from multiple STDs. What does a person deserve after years of days like that? Surely more than the $1, the few hundred out of thousands of comfort women to remain received as reparations. 4. The word Han in Korean means to celebrate your survival in silence, knowing you weren't the only one to pay the price. Means seeing there was less than a grain of rice and still setting the table. Means that when they steal your shovel, use your hands and plant the garden anyways. 5. It took my aunt years to divorce her abusive husband, choosing a bruised neck over an empty mouth. She now works at a 7-Eleven, borrows money from my mom for her daughter's wedding, tries to still her voice into a frozen lake when she calls. Her choice to leave her husband, the same as leaving the church, single women being outcast in Korea, which is to say, being a woman is the loneliest thing if you're trying to survive. 6. My mother, in trying to survive, made us speak English at home, knowing we wouldn't be able to defend the family in our mother tongue. She says the word Han is my birthright, something every Korean owns, but who am I to define this prized ruin, this fertile ash, far from fluent, saying thank you like a foreigner, craving to fit into the language of home and memory, split from the homeland we wouldn't have survived, queer and single-mothered, split from holding each other's words in our mouths like our own, missing what was never ours. Yet, I am this fool coming to praise, if not love, the fracture, knowing it has allowed me to choose, if not forget. And my mother can be more than a survivor, and I can be more than a child who was trained to never ask for more. Thank you. A lot of what I'm grappling with in this book is what it means to unlearn the habits that trauma has taught us. My father was an abusive alcoholic, and I find that So much of the unlearning or relearning shows up in relationship. And so this poem is about figuring out what I'm walking to, because that seems like half the battle of trying to figure out how you leave something behind. It's called A Stubborn Kindness. In order to love you, I must call to me every piece of fruit that has been sliced and set in neat rows before me. The fervent promises made in spring, the bed licked clean by the tongue of the moon. How you made my room a maze of light, closed my eyes and placed the darkest chocolate on my tongue. When I place my hand on your chest, I call to me every time I was not allowed to apologize. That evening, the fireflies in the wet grass made me think all I could be made of is light and light. The few nights my mother brought me tea in bed, that one time she let me wipe her face dry. How you kissed me as if my bones were branches full with fruit for your taking. How I yearn to love like rain, falling without measure. I feel it's like sacrilegious to read from your phone, but I'm gonna do it. Okay, these are 3 new poems. This first one is called When You Put on Your Binder Smelling Like Lavender. When you put on your binder smelling like lavender is the same day you call yourself by your old pronouns as if they were makeup you could put on in the dark, or shoes that don't pinch if you stand still, or the way you pick up the phone using your ex's last name. Your mother's arsenal of gender-neutral words for children grows each day like tomatoes bursting green in your mouth. And when you say thank you, she'll act like it's no big deal, say, of course, and erase the months it took to tell her, or how she's always the last one to know. You have big plans on how you'll tell her about top surgery, how you'll call it back pain. Then in a few months explain how you've been waiting so long, like how you dream about dancing in a crowded hall when the pandemic breaks, or the whole houseplants you move to the sunniest corners every season. You search the internet for more musky scents, bergamot and sandalwood, get annoyed to see lotion gendered like necklaces and watches and jeans and t-shirts and journals and camping gear and shampoo and coffee mugs, and you think maybe you should go back to pretending you are fine with the long hair and the big boobs and pants with fake pockets, like you are watching a butterfly hatch and hoping it'll never break through its cocoon, or know its wings can spread wide and hide them when the big hawk comes, or the years of training yourself to ignore your chest as if it was a brow or book or Tupperware you have to return to the neighbor, or the stain on the carpet everyone just walks around. The real question is, do you wear your binder to the new hairdresser who is Korean and might look at the picture of the bearded actor you bring in like it's kimchi on a hamburger, and who might have a store full of ajumas who will stare and make small efforts to whisper, or she will be like your mom, not understanding you but not hating it, tilting her head at all she cannot name. You're either gutting the fish and leaving it for flies, or shoveling the snow off the sidewalk so you can get to your mailbox. But either way, you need to get your hair cut back from its quarantine shag so you soothe your dry skin, flatten your chest so you can bear the mirror and walk out the door. It's been so healing to be around all of you and in community. I've talked to so many brilliant people this week everyone's been so generous, and I'm so glad I drove because I have like 50 books probably that I can't wait to bring home with me. My brother-in-law asked me the other day why I needed to belong, and I took a deep breath and was like, because I would like to do more than survive. And belonging here with incredible people of color and queer folks who've been here has already been so life-changing. So just want to say thank you all. This poem is for all the folks who know what it's like to speak different languages at home. The right word. I was 18 the first time I got a tattoo. following this one law as if it was a straight line and it didn't mind the ruler. When my mother finally saw the inked leaf on my ankle, she said nothing and walked into the kitchen, which is to say, what could I expect raising children in America? Or the counter needs to be wiped again, or good thing my mother can't see us now. The counselor calls to say I'm a season away from dropping out. My mother's forehead to the mouthpiece, and she's saying, yes, I understand, which is to say a backhand needs no words, or I never wanted this, or I am a bowl held together by a seam. I traveled to Korea for 6 months to learn her language. All I come back with is a word for that week in spring when the petals rain down and pillow the sidewalks in pink, the purple dusk around dark branches, the name of my uncle's cousin's son, and I say, Mom, I missed you, which is to say, I'm not brave enough to say this in a language I can't hide in, or I've missed you my whole life, or let's forget everything. The lonely Christmas tree, the pale cutting board, the phone flying through the air. The first summer I could smell after 27 years of not, I sit on a back porch, darker than my mother likes me from the sun, dizzy with a rupture of peach, my friend running between the porch and kitchen with my favorite sweaters, raspberries, a cap, a cinnamon. My mother calls in the middle of this. And I say, Mom, it smells so good. By which I mean this peach is like a summer body unafraid of its want, or I'm watching the darkness fall to its knees, or remember that one time we laughed together like this. She says, I'm happy for you. Good job. Which is to say, the sky here is a bird's blue. Or do you know the Korean word for wish, or what I would give to be next to you, smelling something for which we will never find a name. Okay. I obsessively timed this, and I'm so pleased it's not 12 o'clock yet. This last one is called Shelter Fantasy, and I ended up writing a lot of sad poems. I was like, let me try to write a happy poem. And this poem is for all of my queer community in the audience, as well as our co-conspirators. Shelter Fantasy. The world is filled with days you can't sing about your love in a high squeal voice off key, but today is Pride in New York fucking City. The air smells like glitter sweat and your second first kiss, shedding the boys you poked your lips at as if you were a straw and calling it a crush just because that's what everyone else called it. You have that feeling in your chest like your throat is sharp with fog, but your mouth is open wide, smiling at the person who bumped into you or palms your cheek when dancing to ABBA as if a pandemic just broke and you will take any kind of touch. You want to build your house around this feeling. Plant asters on top so they will bloom year after year. Build a trellis for morning glory to climb so every day you can watch something open no matter the news or the new laws or the door shut in your face. Towers of red silvers that are impossible to kill. Lilacs purpling everyone who walks past. Citronella because even your blood is too sweet to steal. Call it shelter fantasy, or dirt to make mistakes in, or a place to invite your friends without asking them to quiet down. Every day is a sticky day in June. Every day, give it over to the earth. The look over your shoulder, the hand snaked away, the kiss sucked back inside, and get ready to sweat and dance as if the rain falls just for us, laughing and holding hands, naked feet firmly on the ground. Thanks, y'all.